I'm going to ask you a question and then come back to it in a minute. What kind of work do you currently do?
I am an investigative genetic genealogist and also a woodworker.
Woodworking sounds really interesting. I think we're going to focus on your investigative genealogy today. But before we talk about your work history, I want to know a little bit more about your educational background. After high school, did you have more formal education?
I did. I went on to the College of San Mateo and received a degree and certificate in Administration of Justice and post-certification. And then I went on to San Jose State University and studied criminology and with a minor in sociology.
Did you graduate?
I did.
And was that with a bachelor's degree?
It was.
What year was that?
Really in. I want to say 2010 maybe. Or not. I don't remember.
It's been a few years since you graduated.
It's been 5 years.
Right. Did you take any courses in forensic genetics?
At that time, this did not even exist. And the courses only have started to recently come out. There is no current standard of certification for the work of an investigative genetic genealogy.
Is that newer than your college education degree?
Absolutely. This is a technique that only has come to light in the last 5 years.
And now we're talking about the forensic investigative genetic genealogy.
Yes.
How did you get interested in that?
I really had no knowledge of it when I got involved. I had some health issues that I was going through and needed genetic testing. Unfortunately, my insurance wouldn't cover it, so I took direct-to-consumer DNA test and used the results to upload to a medical site. In the process of that, I found out that my father was not my father, and I then went on a mission to figure out how to identify who my biological father was.
So personally involved and invested, but very much self-taught.
100% self-taught. And this was a time in my life where I was going through cancer treatment. I had a very short prognosis of lifespan left and became incredibly depressed. And so once I identified my biological father, I then wanted to give back. And so I started a free online Facebook group for people who had gotten the same results or were adopted or donor conceived, and I started finding their relatives for them.
That turned into you attending any trainings for genetic genealogy?
So at the time, I did not. So in 2018, in the spring, is when I started doing just genetic genealogy, which is the same concept essentially, but you're just doing it with adoptees, donor conceived and unknown parentage cases. I did a lot of online readings and reading scholarly articles, watching tutorials, just learning about the technique itself. I didn't have any involvement in investigative genetic genealogy until August 2019, when I was asked to join one of the companies that provides that service.
When you joined that company, did they train you in those methods?
No, they actually presume that you have to know what you're doing in order to be a part of the team. And so the presumption is made that you already have enough experience. I continued my own education and training by attending conferences, doing workshops, following other pioneers in the field that had successful case rates, and continued to just educate myself through what I could find on the internet. Because at that time, certification programs, accreditation, any sort of courses, they didn't exist. Those are very, very recent things that have come out.
You mentioned that there were groups of people that you learned from and worked with. Did you check your work or have them check your work as you learned?
Oh, absolutely. The first company, so I've worked for two well-known companies in this industry, and then I have created since my own company. The first company, you worked individually on cases, but it's a collaboration amongst the team, and so you keep each other up to date on what's going on. You ask for advice, guidance, help. The second company that I worked for was more of a team structured way of working cases, and that was at the point when I began actually training all incoming volunteers that wanted to get to learn how to work these cases.
That first company you worked for, what was that called?
Identifyingers International.
And how many years did you work for Identifyingers?
Just over 2.5 years.
And that's where you did investigating genetic genealogy and other teammates check your work?
Yes, with Identifyingers, I only did suspect cases, so only murder and rape, violent crime cases. They did not do DOE cases at the time that I was working with them.
So you're talking about those kind of cases that you did, those were for law enforcement, you were identifying somebody that was unknown.
Yes.
Okay, and you worked with check there while you did that for 2.5 years?
Yes.
Okay. The next place you worked, what was that?
The DNA DOE project.
What do you mean by that? You mentioned that in your last.
DOE is an unidentified remains. The DNA DOE project specifically takes on adult DOE cases, not baby cases. So I worked those cases on my own with my company, but it's identifying not suspects, only unidentified remains.
And you were not law enforcement there, you were not doing anything for law enforcement there, so it's a little bit different, do I understand that right?
So for both companies, we were working on behalf of law enforcement. We would contract these cases with law enforcement, but law enforcement was not in fact working the case. The genealogists were working the cases.
Okay. For law enforcement to get it answered?
Yes.
All right, and so how long did you work at that location?
I was with the DNA DOE project for about 2 years.
And is that where you did some teaching and training about genetic genealogy?
Yes.
From there, where did your career take you?
Well, I ended up opening my own company, but the DNA DOE project offered me the opportunity to be an intake specialist. So my primary role was when somebody was interested in doing this type of work and wanted to learn the technique, we would bring them on board, and I was the one who would teach them the process. So all new volunteers were on a specific case that was run by me, and I would not only train them, but also check their work, make sure that they were documenting things properly and that the documents matched with the proper person that they had put in the tree. I also, the University of New Haven had also started a forensic investigative genetic genealogy course that you could take. that had a practicum at the end of it. The DNA Doe Project was the first organization that took on a cohort of students. The first year of this course that was offered, it wasn't fine-tuned. So the students that I took on for the internship, there were 6 students in total. They really had very limited knowledge of the technique, of the meaning of anything really. And so I would spend hours training them, and at the end of 7 weeks, I led them to a solve of a case.
You were trusted with me.
Yes, I was.
Do you know roughly how many law enforcement forensic investigators and criminality cases you work?
I have worked just for law enforcement cases probably around 25 to 30.
And the Doe Project, how many of those kinds of cases?
So that would include all cases.
The 25 includes the Doe cases?
Yeah, it's about 25 to 30. It would encompass any case that I have worked that is law enforcement case, not including the cases that were unknown parentage cases.
And of the other kinds of genetic genealogy, how many times have you worked a case in genetic genealogy other than that?
How many cases? Minimum 25. I still have people every day who, it depends. Some people just don't know what any of this means. And so it's as simple as just looking at their matches and explaining it to them, and they do it on their own. But actually working cases, probably another 25 to 30 that are just unknown parentage cases.
And have you testified before in court?
I have not.
Let's talk about what brings you here. How did you get involved in our case with Friday?
I was contacted by defense. Well, I take that back. I was contacted by somebody in this field. I don't know if I can say who it was or if it's relevant. Asking if I would be willing to talk to the defense. And I agreed, and I had that, it was a Zoom call in which I was asked basically just to explain the process in which I go through from start to finish on a case. So what is, from when law enforcement contacts me to when I provide the investigative lead back to law enforcement, what is the process? And that was the extent of my involvement at the time.
Ms. Vargas, what I want to do is I want to briefly run through that. What do you do when law enforcement calls you and you get through? What's your first step?
So it's a complex, it's very complex. Essentially, law enforcement will contact me and say they have a case that they are unable to solve, and they would like to, they like my services. I first evaluate what type of case is it, and are there any, what is the DNA that is involved? Do we have to extract the DNA? Have you already extracted the DNA? So there's a lot of preliminary questions. Once we establish that and they agree to take, have me take on the case, I have them set up to ship the sample, whether it be something that needs to be extracted to the lab that does that, or DNA that's already been extracted that needs to be sequenced. The law enforcement agency will then send that to a third-party forensic lab. At that point, when the lab receives the sample, I essentially take over the case until I provide the genetic lead back to, or the investigative lead back to the agency. In the meantime, I will stay in contact with usually the detective and provide updates on, did it pass quality check in the lab? It's being sequenced now. The data file has been complete. It's gone through bioinformatics. I've uploaded it, to GEDmatch. Do you want to upload to FTDNA, Family Tree DNA, because there's an additional charge for that? And so I keep them kind of abreast as to what's going on, but essentially the case is it's mine. It's in my control until I am done.
And do you, during those communications with law enforcement, do you take their direction? And if they say stop working, do you stop working?
Absolutely. The case belongs to them. It is not my case. It is not my data. I am providing a service for them. The only request that I have is they not have another company work the case at the same time, because it's just a lot of work that you go through. But I am at their direction. Yeah, I don't.
So it's not as easy as just getting a profile and sticking it in your computer and having it.
Oh, absolutely not. I've had cases that have taken me 14 months to solve.
Why, you mentioned you use GEDmatch or Family Tree DNA, but there's an extra fee involved in that. Can you explain that a little more?
So there's many direct-to-consumer databases: Ancestry, 23andMe, MyHeritage, Family Tree DNA, all of which you can order from the company a DNA test, spit in the tube, and send it off back to the company. Ancestry and 23andMe allow you to download your data and upload free to these other sites as a normal consumer. Law enforcement cases, however, are only permitted to be uploaded into Family Tree DNA and to GEDmatch for a fee. GEDmatch, however, is not a direct-to-consumer testing site. It is only a database where people take their test results from the company in which they tested and upload this site to the site to get more matches, essentially, or higher, closer relatives, higher matches.
Does law enforcement have access to all of GEDmatch?
If properly uploaded, there is a fee that you must pay. You must upload through a separate database than the one in which consumers upload through. You must pay the fee, and you, depending on the case, may be limited on the matches that you are able to see.
Why is that?
The terms of service have changed several times since the Golden State Killer case came out, and which investigative genetic genealogy became very popular. It used to have everyone opted in, then GEDmatch opted everybody out, and you had to choose to opt into law enforcement matching as a consumer. Then it decided to automatically opt DOE cases in. So to break that down, if you were to take a DNA test in Ancestry and want to upload to GEDmatch, when you input that file, it's going to ask you, do you consent to law enforcement matching? And if you hit no, and I am working violent crime non-DOE case, I should not be able to see that you are a match to my unknown DNA contributor.
You said should not.
Should not.
Does it happen anyway?
It does. It has.
And is that because there's a problem with GenMatch, it's just a fluke, you upload it and all of a sudden these things that shouldn't happen did?
There there are a lot of tools that are available in GenMatch. These tools allow you to make comparisons of two or more people and how they relate to each other and share DNA. One of these tools allows you to compare many matches, not only against your DNA profile that you're working, but also against all of their matches to see if their matches match each other. When you utilize this tool, there is a feature that you can edit the list of kits that are originally selected.
What does that mean, edit the list of kits?
So when you upload your profile, it takes about 24, 48, 72 hours max to batch and tokenize in the system. It then produces a list of matches, okay? And these matches are biological relatives to the unknown DNA contributor. We don't know right away what relationship they are, but they are all biological relatives, okay? One of the tools is called the matrix tool. And what the matrix does is it compares the match, the DNA profile against a specified number of the profile's matches. So for example, if I run the profile's kit number, they're all given a kit number. If I run the profile's kit number and I compare it to 100 of the profile's top matches, it will in turn compare the profile to all of the matches and all of the matches to everyone on that list of 100 people. Okay?
I think I see what you're saying. Let me make sure. So you have one person, you get a list of their matches, but this tool also gives you a list of those matches.
So it's a multi-step process. So initially, if I am putting my subject's DNA in the system, I don't know who it belongs to, I put their kit number in. You get a kit number after you upload the data, okay? I put the kit number in, I run a tool called one-to-many, and it's gonna show the top 500 matches that this subject has. I then would go to utilize the manipulation tool, the loophole. You would then go click the top match and run their matches. So the top match of your subject's top match, you would run their matches, okay? Once you run their matches, there is a tool that allows you to edit that list of matches. So we're looking at the matches of the subject's top relative, not the subject's matches, right? When you edit the kit list, if you put the subject's kit number into this tool that you're going to now analyze, these matches, it tricks the system and allows you to see matches that you wouldn't have seen when you ran your initial match list.
Okay. And those can include people that did not agree with law enforcement to see their DNA.
Those matches that are revealed are only matches that have been opted out.
And that is just only the ones that are supposed to be.
They're only the ones. If you see that the subject matches one of these people, because again, you're not looking at your subject's matches, you're looking at that person's top cousin, let's say, that top cousin's matches, right? When you put your subject's kit number in there, you're gonna see now his kit, her kit, compared against the matches of their top match. When you find, you then scroll down and you look, oh, here's a match for 100 centimorgans. You go back to your screen where you have your list of your subject matches and you say, I don't have a match with 100 centimorgans. That proves that that person has opted out of law enforcement matching, but I'm still able to see them.
And so that's a way to use the tool to get past what law enforcement is supposed to do.
I struggle with this. I'm sorry. It is a tool that is provided in the database that essentially allows you to see things that you're not supposed to see. And as a result of seeing those things, you're then using that match to find who, to identify your subject. So you're violating the terms of service by seeing these matches.
This is in general.
This is in gen match.
How about family tree DNA? That's the other law enforcement database.
There's two things that I'm aware of in family tree DNA. One is not paying to upload. So there's very strict parameters when it comes to law enforcement kits. One of the parameters is if you as a consumer are a match to a law enforcement kit, you cannot see that kit as a regular consumer. So law enforcement kits can see everybody in the database that have opted in. Now, Family Tree also has an opt-in out feature that is not the same as GenMatch. You have to go into the settings and find it and toggle whether or not you choose to opt in or out. Many people are unaware of this. Another instance is uploading the data as if you were a consumer. You bypass the fees that you're supposed to pay to Family Tree DNA for a law enforcement kit, whereas a consumer it's free. And you also get full access to the database, including matches that have opted out.
Does this happen?
Yes.
If I'm an attorney and I have a case where genetic genealogy has been utilized by law enforcement, and I want to know if they follow the protocols and rules, do I need the genetic genealogy information that, like, you produce as a forensic genetic genealogist? Do I need that information so I don't know?
If you wanted to know what the process was, whether or not there was work product, if you wanted to verify how did you come to your conclusion, absolutely.
How about if I wanted to know if the rules were broken?
You would need the data. You would need to see the data.
Just a second, while I check my notes. do have another question about another database, MyHeritage. Is that one that law enforcement uses?
Many in this industry have been known to upload to MyHeritage. Essentially, these databases, you're only bound by the terms of service. And there are workarounds in every one of the databases that somebody knows about and has told you about, or you yourself have tried. There's really no justification for it. You think you're doing the right thing, you want to help, and
There's a lot of information in the genetic genealogy.
there is. It is a very tedious process. There is a lot of time, effort, and work that goes into it. In the end, what I provide to law enforcement is an investigative lead, and it is up to the agency to then take over their case and confirm that my lead is in fact correct.
How does law enforcement upload to MyHeritage?
So the upload to these databases is, you go to the website, you create a free account, you take the data file, you hit upload, and voila, you've got now a list of matches. It's the same as a regular consumer would do in both MyHeritage and Family Tree DNA. GEDmatch law enforcement uploads now through a separate portal called GEDmatch Pro, but there are instances of people doing work on behalf of law enforcement uploading to GEDmatch through the consumer portal as if it were a consumer kit.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions. I'm not sure if the prosecutor does.
Okay, thank you. This one must be excused. Yeah, thank you, Ms. Vargas. Appreciate you.
Your Honor, our last witness is Vicka Barlow, and I think she's probably in the small library.
Thank you.